everyone. This is Sarah Berman, and you are watching Practically Writing. Now, I have to apologize because I know I said I wouldn't do it again, but I am late again. And I have a really good reason for it. We had a house guest, and that situation quickly turned into a huge, unbelievable, what the heck drama. And I did not really feel that in the midst of all that, it would be ideal for me to sit down and try and present myself in a professional type of way, or any kind of way, like even, remotely having my shit together kind of way. None of that was going to work. So I'm actually recording 2 videos today. Yay! The second topic that I'm doing for this week is writing better emotions. And this is something that I consider a bit of a forte of mine. Mostly because people keep telling me I do it so well. As usual, I'll be doing announcements at the end of the show, so keep an eye out for those. And let's get started. Writing emotions is probably the most important thing to do the whole show don't tell thing, and a lot of people aren't really sure what show don't tell really means. You get the idea, but what does it really mean? Here's an example. John clenched his fists in anger. Tell. John squeezed his fists together until his nails dug into his palms. He could feel the heat burning in his ears as his vision turned red. His fury knew no bounds. Dun, dun, dun. Show. Essentially, show, don't tell means we know what the word angry means. And it's a word. But when you have heat crawling up the back of your neck, when you have nails digging into your palms, when you have the sweat pouring down your right behind your ears and it gets really cold and then it drips down your neck, when you have your stomach churning, when you have the feeling in your stomach like you're about to throw up, when you feel so light that you could almost fly, when you feel so much joy that you just want to sob, those are the shows. Those are the things where you are explaining the emotions, not just with words. You're explaining the emotions with feelings. And I'm not talking emotion feelings. I'm talking about physical manifestations. And that's where you nail it. So that seems pretty basic, right? Why isn't everybody doing this? Well, I think there are 2 reasons. 1, it can be really uncomfortable to analyze how you physically react to strong emotions. And it can be really hard to do that. Usually we're just caught up in the emotions. We're not thinking about whether or not our palms are sweaty, or, if we feel like this pressure in the back of our eyeballs. But we recognize those descriptions when they're given to us. So it takes a lot of introspection and analysis to figure out how a person physically reacts to these emotions. The good news is people have been doing this for centuries, so just pay attention to the descriptions, pay attention to, the way that you feel when you're feeling feelings. And psychology is actually a really good way to look at how you physically react to emotions. So, there are actually quite a few resources out there about this, and I highly recommend you look into them, because when you can bring in those visceral physical reactions to emotional situations, it gives your descriptions so much more reality. The other reason I think that people have a difficult time with these descriptions, with these really emotional descriptions, is generally when you are describing these things, you kind of have to feel them to a degree, and to get the really good reactions, you need really strong emotions. And most of them are not going to be pleasant emotions. We're talking about despair. We're talking about trauma. We're talking about hopelessness and depression and, rage and bloodlust and, things that make you feel out of control, not in control. And while that's great, it's not a great feeling. So it can be really hard for people to tap into that aspect of themselves. I don't know how to help you with that, honestly. I am the crazy lady who swan dives into negative emotions, and I get my rubber ducky and go all the way, because I love being able to bring those descriptions into things. I love the fact that in Fluffy Bunny, when I did the Dark Soul meditation for Nicola, I knew what that meant. I knew what that felt like because I've done it. I know how these emotions work because I've felt them. And even the ones that I haven't felt as a direct consequence of that specific situation, I've felt something similar or in a similar enough situation that I can tap into that and extrapolate. So it's a lot of work, lots of tears, not gonna lie about that, but I've gotten so many compliments about it because it nails it. Even now I cannot read it without crying, and I know that at least 3 people have told me that it is the most memorable part of that book. So there we go. Okay, but I mean, if it's so hard on people to experience these emotions, why would you even bother? Well, why do you read books? Because experiencing those emotions through story is kind of our safe way to explore these things. Maybe I'm a little more idealistic about my fiction, but I know that there are works of fiction that are essentially silly genres. Paranormal romance is a big one. If they're done right, then I've seen a few of them that are done right, and they evoke an emotional reaction that have actually helped people that I know deal with some sort of emotional issue that they themselves have. And it's as simple as, I went through this thing and oh my gosh, look, somebody else actually knows what it's like to go through this thing. Whether it's just because it's the author who managed to nail it, or the character, or whatever, it makes you feel less alone. It makes you feel more capable of handling these things. It's kind of a way of being able to work through it without directly working through it, by going along with the main character on their journey of working through it. Kind of like the way Bastian did in the Neverending Story. He endured the whole journey through Atreyu. And of course, from a marketing perspective, from a, famous author goal perspective, your book becomes more memorable when you evoke these emotions. Your book becomes something that has touched somebody so deeply that they are going to go back to it. They are going to recommend it. They're going to treasure that. And that's how you become one of those authors. Be one of those authors. We like to be one of those authors. you want to evoke emotional responses. And evoking emotional responses sometimes means you have to trigger an emotional response. And more importantly, you have to describe the emotional response in all its ugly glory. The other aspect about writing really good emotional scenes is to make sure that those emotions are appropriate. Now, this can go two ways. One is where, we've all had those books where it's like, seriously, drama much, because somebody is going completely spastic over something that really isn't that big of a deal. The other thing is underreacting, like, oh, look, my world just ended. Meh. No, you have to really think about what kind of response is not only realistic for a person in general, but also realistic for your character. And we all have seen those characters that can just handle anything that is thrown their way. And, they're like the Superman of main characters. After a while, it's just like, we already know they can handle it. What I like to do is I like to bring in a certain amount of humanity, a certain amount of question. Can they really handle it? But it needs to be done in a realistic way. So they react very realistically to the things that happen to them. If Nicola undergoes trauma, then she deals with the effects of that. We're on book 3. She's dealing with PTSD. In book 4, she's going to be dealing with that further in a different way because her trauma has evolved. But either way, she has gone through some crap and she has to deal with that. And it affects whether or not she is successful at dealing with the things that happen in her quests. The other thing I like to throw at people is a sort of skew of an emotional reaction. In book 1, Nicola discovers that one of her new acquaintances is something that is not quite human. Some people would have gone completely spastic about this, but because of Nicola's background, she's pretty much like, okay, well, first of all, I have people coming to me with stuff like this all the time, and most of the time it's like, okay, whatever. But I mean, yeah, we know for you it's like really physically true, but at the same time, we also just encountered demons that were trying to kill us, and you, not so bad. So it was a matter of putting it into perspective of her own personal experiences, both lifetime and recent. She was just kind of like, okay, we can deal with this. We can deal with this. There we go. Let's deal with this. Because for her, that was a very realistic way of dealing with it. It wasn't that it wasn't, a big reveal, but at the same time, when you put it in perspective to everything else that had been happening, it was just kind of like, oh, and by the way. And so that's how she treated it. To kind of summarize, in order to do really good emotional descriptions and to really evoke emotions, you want to bring in the physical effects. You want to put it into perspective both for the character and the context of what's going on. You want to give realistic consequences for what the characters are going through, and do not avoid the nasty, dirty emotions. Dig down deep into them and learn about them, learn what the physical reactions are, and bring those in. They're going to do you a solid. So, once again, if you liked this video, make sure you ring the bell, make sure you subscribe, make sure you click the thumbs up, You can find all of my links below, including where to purchase Too Wyrd and Fluffy Bunny, which I have discussed a bit in this video. Again, The Chains That Bind, Book 3, is accepted by the publisher and should be out shortly. Not too shortly, but shortly. Like maybe 6 months. That's usually about how it works. You can find all of my social media links down below. Make sure you follow me. You can join my 13 in 24 challenge. That's hashtag 13 in 24 challenge, in which I am publishing 13 times in 24 months. You can join me with that by following the hashtag on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or you can join me on my writing challenge forum on my website, authorgoddess.com. We will see you around. I don't know what that was.